Fans showed up for a football game in Eugene. Turned out to be a track meet. Sixth-ranked Oregon scored a touchdown on 6 of their 7 drives in the first half, including a receiving and a rushing touchdown from 5-star freshman receiver Danielson Moore, who also ran track in high school. The game was over at halftime. The Ducks had more touchdowns in the first half than Oklahoma State had first downs. Final score, 69-3. Dante Moore, 16 of 21, 266, 3 touchdowns. Total yards was 631 to 211. This Big Ten on CBS postgame report is presented by Belfour Property Restoration. Let's get back out to Autzen Stadium. Welcoming Gary Danielson, who called this game. And Gary, look, we might have expected Oregon to win this game. Did you expect it to be? Are you surprised it's by this margin?
Sure. I figured it would be probably in the blowout category, but, used to be when a Power 4 team played a Power 4 team, blowout meant, 42-13 or something like that. I think Mike Gundy had a feeling that when he turned on a tape and when he started talking is like, we're not ready for this, what he saw on tape, and that was evident in this football game. Now, Oklahoma State lost their starting quarterback, so they come in here with a young guy playing on the road against this team. It just wasn't a great matchup. They couldn't throw, and they had no quarterback runs. Got ugly.
Gary, how much do you think the comments made by Mike Gundy fueled Dan Lanning and his staff? Because this new era of college football. Do you think that he heard those comments and said, you know what? Let's go out there and make a statement?
Well, I do think Dan used them. Because he's got his team, and I think he sometimes worries about, I hope we're not just looking at Penn State, because that's been the theme here. Let's get better, let's get better. We want to be playing our peak football for Penn State. So I think Dan was able to use this maybe to fire up his team in between, but I don't know. I'd rather doubt, okay, maybe it's, 52-3. But this was, got really, really ugly. It's 2 pass interceptions really were tough for a young quarterback. But I think clearly across almost the whole spectrum of players, even backups, nobody on Oklahoma State would have much of a chance of playing reasonable minutes for Oregon right now.
Gary, what will be your takeaway from this game, a 69-3 Oklahoma victory, Oregon victory, rather?
Sure. If Dante Moore continues to improve, if he becomes a legitimate threat, we know what his potential is. The firepower on this offense with Danielson Moore, the 5-star wide receiver, much like Jeremiah Smith, the package of running back, just threats all over the field. They will be a threat to get in the playoffs. One of the 4 teams in the Big Ten. The one question I had, I didn't see many plays interior, the defensive line at tackle for Oregon. That's the one spot Dan wanted to be better. He looked at what Ohio State was a year ago, what Michigan was 2 years ago, what Georgia was when he was coaching there, and he knew they won with talent in that interior defensive line. I think that's still the main question mark about this Oregon team.
Oregon has won 20 straight regular season games, longest active streak in FBS. Gary Danielson watched it for us there in Eugene. Gary, good to see you as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week, perhaps a much closer game.
I hope so. Take care.
An absolute beatdown, Oregon over Oklahoma State, 69-3. One of the largest losses in Oklahoma State history as they get beat by 66. We mentioned the comments during the week. Mike Gundy declared that the Ducks were spending $40 million annually on their football team. Dan Lanning responded. He said he had a ton of respect for Mike Gundy, and he said the line here that's going to stick with me perhaps: some people save to have an excuse for why they don't, right? So, look, you want to spend money, this is what it looks like. And Oregon is spending money. It's simply they have a blank check. And so they're going to spend some money to win here. They came up short last year. They are certainly a national championship contender, and they make a massive statement here in week 2. This Big Ten on CBS Postgame Report is presented by Belfour Property Restoration. And it was all Oregon on Saturday afternoon in Eugene. 9 different players scored a touchdown. It was over at halftime. Just to put in perspective, Oregon had more touchdowns than Oklahoma State had first downs in the first half. A resounding win for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. CBS Sports HQ presented by Belfort Property Restoration. Back here with former Oregon star running back and Super Bowl champ Kenjon Barner and CBS Sports college football insider Richard Johnson. Look, I expected Oregon to win this game. I wasn't so sure it was going to be 69-3. Your reaction is what to your Ducks winning big?
They went out and did exactly what I expected them to do.
Okay.
I know Coach Lanning, and I know how he is with these guys, and I know how these guys are about him. And so when you feel slighted, when Dan Lanning feels slighted, it fuels this team. So I expected them to come out. I said on a podcast that they would put up 54 points.
Okay.
My boy Jonathan Stewart said that they would put up 60. They did. So this wasn't a surprise to me. I expected this. Oklahoma State is just not a good team right now. And you run up against a powerhouse in Oregon that's on the rise, that's pushing forward towards a national championship, and unfortunately this is the end result of that.
Do you hear what Kenyon said right there? He said that Oklahoma State's not a good team right now. And you hear that, right? And people go, what are you talking about? They're a Power 4, they're a Big 12 team. This is a quality program, that's one. But if you're not spending money, Richard, you're not going to be competing.
No, and Oklahoma State had serious concerns about that and serious issues about that heading into this season, so much so that Mike Gundy had to take a pay cut and add some of that money into their NIL budget over the offseason because they weren't spending. They came into this season with a quarterback battle between Haas Haney and Zane Flores. Neither of those two players had ever taken a snap in the orange and black. Haney obviously goes down in that week 1 game. He'll be out for a significant time, and so it's Zane Flores' show. And we saw today that that's not a very good show. This result does not surprise me at all, though, guys. I spoke to a source in the building earlier about the back and forth that Gundy and Dan Lanning had this week, and I sent him the link to our story about those comments, and I said, well, what do you expect on Saturday? And the person just texted me back and said, we're going to run it up. Simple as. Yeah. They have an ability, does Oregon, to flip the switch under Dan Lanning. You remember a couple years ago when Colorado came to Autzen? Colorado was riding high. And Dan Lanning got in that locker room before the game and said, we're playing for wins, they're playing for clicks. Yeah. And they absolutely erased them in this game. They did similar in this game. They go for it on 4th down, 3rd drive of the game. They went for 2 in the first quarter. They went for it on 4th down in the red zone right before the half versus kicking the field goal. They were coming out here in this game to prove a point. It's not just we're going to beat you. We're going to erase you. We're going to make you look JV. And that is exactly what they did from the entire game. From snap 1 to snap to the end of the game. Like that.
I want to take you back to those comments earlier this week because it certainly fired up Oregon. Take a listen.
What I hear chatter from coaches around the country is that non-conference scheduling, and I never thought anybody would ever say this, should be based on the financial situation for each school. I guessed that the last 3 years that we spent around $7 million over the 3 years. And I think Oregon spent close to 40 last year alone.
We spend to win. Some people say to have an excuse for why they don't, right? And ultimately, like, he's a great coach. They've done an unbelievable job, but I want to be a team that's competing at the highest level. And we're really fortunate to be in that situation.
So, to be fair, Mike Gundy sort of walked it back and he said my comments were intended to be complimentary. I don't know if you take that complimentary. I'm not sure that you need, but look, in this game, sometimes you need something to fire you up, right? Just that little edge, that little chip in this high major college football. Because at the end of the day, it's, look, you get what you pay for, right? That's always been a life saying that if you're going to spend money, you might get some of the top players in the country, and this Oregon team does. But you know Dan Lanning, he's with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. This is the kind of stuff that will fire you up. Look, hey, they think that we overspend. Yeah. Let's go over the over and knock them out. Like, that's right. That's you're selling them on a moment here.
Yeah. it doesn't take much to fire these guys up or to sell them. This team, this environment, it's a young energy. It's a group of guys that feed into this, that buy into this. And Coach Lanning is a coach that can get to you. He can mentor you. He can speak to you. He can meet you where you're at and pull something out of you that a lot of coaches can't. And to your point, what you said, you have to pay to play. And that's what Oregon is doing at a very high level. The top teams in college football are spending money. You have to spend to get the players because it's a competition. I can get some money here. I can get more money here. What are you going to do? And unfortunately for Oklahoma State, it just doesn't seem like they have the alum that's willing to pour into the program like you would think that you should coming from a place like that.
Richard, do you think that games like these will start to change the dynamic, the landscape in college football? That wins like these will start to change how teams schedule their non-conference opponents, change how they schedule some of their, quote, cupcakes?
No, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, you can sit here, all these Power 4 teams, and say, oh, well, strength of schedule, we're worried about that. We're playing extra conference games, so we don't want to be beat up in the non-conference. At the end of the day, there's a money where your mouth is proponent to that, in the sense of your fans do not want to come to watch you play an FCS school, for instance, or a G5 school, for instance. It's hard to put butts in seats for those. And all these athletic directors that kind of have that fear-mongering about them when they say it, they all know that. They all know that helmet games matter. And I know the result was not indicative of a Power 4 opponent today. But at the end of the day, when Oklahoma State had it humming, this game would have been much, much closer than it appeared today. So the scheduling intent, I think, is very nice from both programs, and it's something that I think all of us want to see moving forward. Now, obviously, we also want to see Oklahoma State getting back to being anywhere near the heights of the Gundy era so that the scheduling intent has actually paid off and they don't play like this.
All right, so we know Oregon spends a lot of money, blah, 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 right? That's what the media guys are going to say. Oh, look, Oregon spends a lot of money. They're going to win games, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to know the team a little better, right? Dante Moore has been waiting for his chance to take over. He does. He's excellent in this game. We saw DeCorian Moore, five-star freshman out of Duncanville, Texas. I've been following this kid since he was a senior in high school. Like, I've been watching his clips because he played both sides of the ball. He was a track star. When I knew that they were going to get this kid, I was like, this kid's going to be incredible. The downside is he's 5'11". Now, I'm not saying you can measure heart, right? Because he's got big heart. But the thing is, some of these players, they're dogs, number one. The other thing is we get to know this roster a little bit better because there is some turnover from last year.
Absolutely. So when you have a guy, to your point, like DeCorian Moore that comes in, and you lose a guy like Evan Stewart, you have to have guys step up. And DeCorian is that guy. I go back, I was out there during spring ball. He carries the demeanor of a number one guy. He carries the attitude of a number one guy. When he goes out there and plays in practice, he treats practice like a game. And when you look at this roster and the way that it's constructed, these are all guys that would contribute to any other college football program that's out there, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Bama, whether it's Clemson, any of these schools. The guys that's on this roster, they would play. And so Oregon has a luxury that a lot of teams, Oklahoma State does not have. They have depth, they have youth, and they have talent.
And they have a quarterback who's been in this system, and he was a top quarterback coming out in 2023, transferred from UCLA, comes to Oregon, now has a chance to really make a Heisman run, but more importantly for Oregon, they're chasing a natty, Richard. I mean, this is obviously that's the big picture here, but they have the pieces to do so, especially because what we tend to forget about is defense, and that's Dan Lanning's calling card. We haven't even talked about the defense.
All they went and did in the transfer portal last season was take one of the best players in the Big Ten, Dylan Thieneman, at safety, and they got him from Purdue out of the portal. Bear Alexander, now, I know, he's got to be consistent, but Bear Alexander comes to them from USC. Obviously, Bear Alexander was at Georgia initially, so he's got some ties to this Oregon staff. Amari Washington is a player up front at defensive tackle. Let me tell you something. That young man is an absolute problem next to Bear Alexander on the defensive interior. And then you flip over to the offensive side of the ball, and you got a player like Kenyon Sadiq, who I think is the best tight end in college football. Yeah. Didn't really do much today, but he is an absolute athletic marvel. So they've got pieces pieces. And to me, this Oregon offense is not an offense where you need a ton from your quarterback. They were able to drop Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel into this Will Stein offensive system, and it was able to hum. And so Dante Moore's been in the building. He's been there. He's studied up, and he's ready to rock with this offense. You saw what he did today. Very efficient with the football. Again, you know, they're not really meeting the stiffest opposition, clearly, but he did what he needed to do with the football, and they scored a ton of points.
Well, we expect there to be resistance in 3 weeks' time when they face Penn State, a rematch of the Big Ten championship game. That was a closely decided game, and Penn State's no joke this season either. They have the guys as well to compete, so we look forward to that sort of resistance coming up in that game. Time now for the Belfour Player of the Game. And look, Kenjon, you can go anywhere. I mean, there was a lot of guys that contributed here for Oregon. Who's your player of the game?
Typically, you would go quarterback, right?
Sure.
I'm not going there. I got to feed the guys in the trenches. And I'm not going Teo Ungalalele neither. I'm going to go to Tony T, son, Tatum Tuioti. Guy had 4 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, really got pressure, really got the job done. It's typically Teo that's getting the shine, right? But when you have a group of guys that is talented as this defensive line, you get different guys pop up. But I am going to go to the offensive side of the ball, and I got to go DK. Last week, he was baptizing men in the name of the mighty Oregon Ducks in the end zone. This week, he was blessing the fan base with his first career touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Shout out to DK getting the job done. 2 phenomenal guys, and this team is loaded.
I'm going to go Noah Whittington for my player of the game. Tulane transfer Mekhi Hughes is on this roster at running back as well. He was a much ballyhooed transfer this offseason. But Noah Whittington said, now hold on a second, this is my room.
Not so fast, my friend.
Sir. Absolutely. Whittington didn't do a ton in this game as far as carries, but 4 for 91, yeah, that'll do. Yeah. A long touchdown as well to really get things going in the first quarter. I think Whittington being able to stiff arm the rest of that running back room and say, no, this is my job. You got to take it from me, and no one has. Great player, exceptional today in limited quantities, the limited quantities that they needed.
Do you think that's going to be a problem when you've got so many guys running the football and a guy wants to be that alpha?
I don't.
Okay.
Being around that team, this is a great group of young men. And all these guys support each other. I had the opportunity, again, being up there for almost the entire month of April during spring ball, to where you can really, it's really competitive, right? This is where we're trying to see who the lead guy is going to be. But to see these guys cheer for each other, be there for each other, support one another, help each other, this is a great group. This is a great room. But to your point, when you have a guy like Mekhi Hughes on the roster, who was one of the top backs coming from Tulane, and he's not seeing the field until the 3rd or 4th guy, that speaks to the talent pool that's in that room.
Oregon with a resounding 69-3 win over Oklahoma State. It's an absolute blowout at Autzen Stadium. Kenjon Barner is smiling ear to ear. He loves it. His Ducks getting it done. And Oklahoma State gives up 69 points in this game, 4th most points allowed in a game in Cowboys history. Mike Gundy and the Cowboys had no answer for Oregon in this one. And it is Oregon, 6th ranked in the nation. Will definitely be a top 5 team come the rankings, but they've got their sights set on much bigger things, trying to win a national championship.